Welcome to Experiments in Leadership, practical insights for Caribbean business leaders. Hi, I'm Anthony Subera and welcome to Experiments in Leadership and for another episode in our Cyber Resilience series for Caribbean business leaders. Today's episode is a bit of a continuation from our episode 4, where we discussed that cybercriminals thrive on chaos. So there may be some repetition from that episode. I do apologize if it sounds familiar. But in this episode, I want to focus only on your staff as it relates to your cyber defense. So if I were to ask you, are your people your first line of cyber defense or one of your highest risk? And while I'm sure most, if not all, would state people are in fact our first line of defense, which is commendable, we must always build environments where it does not take one click to take down our most critical system, because our staff can also be one of our highest risk. You see, while staff may not always be the root cause of a successful cyber breach, they are, however, the leading delivery mechanism that attackers exploit. And as we discussed in episode 4, attackers weaponize psychology, triggering emotional responses that bypass logic just enough to gain access to our system. And as also shared in that episode, our staff click malicious links not only because they're careless, but because attacks are designed to exploit emotions like urgency, they need to act now, or authority messages that appear to come from government, customers, executives, or even vendors. Familiarity, known brands, internal language, business workflows that they're familiar with. Cognitive load, where busy employees making fast decisions under pressure with very little verification or validation taking place. And then, of course, reward bias, invoices, resumes, shared documents that look productive and of value. I always say when an email is structured as though it looks like work, I would say more than 50% the staff would click on it. When organizations respond by telling staff to be more careful, we may be missing the point. Because if a single mistake can escalate into a material incident, the system is the one that is failing and not necessarily the individual. You see, as leaders, we must shift the question from why did the employee click on that email to one that is, why did one click have so much impact to our organization? To me, that's where durable risk reduction lives. This also involves implementing strong cybersecurity programs that combine preventative controls that reduce exposure, identity protections that limit credential abuse, network segmentation that contains damage and reduces easy access into our critical data. And then, of course, training that builds judgment and the ability to identify red flags and not to generate fear. And we spoke about this in episode 4 as well, when we shared the principle behind the Zero Trust cybersecurity framework, which is never trust, but always verify. The goal is not perfect behavior. The goal is to design resilience in our organization. I would like us to explore a real-world scenario. An employee receives an email that looks like a legitimate document request from a known partner, customer, or even their boss. They open it between meetings, credentials are captured, and by the next morning, attackers are already in your system. And leadership is managing an incident that started with a well-intended action. Blaming employees does not always reduce the risk. Designing systems that expect human behavior does. A question I always ask executives, especially if I'm conducting executive training, is how many user actions, clicks, logins, approvals would it take for an attacker to reach one of your most critical systems today? If the answer is 1, then your systems need improvement, and that has to be done urgently. All right? So let us wrap up this discussion with some key leadership takeaways. Number 1, treat staff as risk signals and not risk owners or risk controllers only. Reduce the impact of mistakes through identity controls and network segmentation that protects your critical assets. Design security assuming people are busy and not necessarily careless. Train for recognition and reporting, not perfection. And measure how quickly human-initiated threats are contained. One of the things I always recommend is if you just completed a scheduled phishing campaign and coming out in that report indicated that 30% of your staff actually clicked on the link, then logically you have a 30% probability that if in fact it was a genuine phishing attack, you possibly could be breached. I believe people do not always feel security, but security at times can fail to anticipate people. All right, so I want to close off with that comment, particularly to this topic. But I just want to share a few points before we actually close off. Now, we have been getting some pretty good feedback and suggestions based on the episodes we have done so far. So I want to thank everyone. I'm also asking to continue doing so. We are very open to feedback. I mean, this podcast was created to share experiences and practical cyber resilience insights amongst business leaders. So if there's a topic you wish for us to discuss, please add it to the comments. And our team will take a look at it. As the podcast grows, we will all grow through knowledge and shared experiences. Okay, one of the other comments I got is that my Trini accent is coming across too strongly, and I need to slow down a bit. So I'm working on the speed. On the accent side, I've been in Canada for 9 years, and it ain't changed yet. And you would have heard the word eh. All right, but I'm going to work on it. All right, so thank you so much for spending some time with us. I'm Anthony Subero, and take good care for now. Hi, if this episode brought any value to you, we kindly ask you to share it with others. If you need help on your cyber resilience journey, you can find us on www.stratos-cyber.com. Until we meet again, keep well.